This is an overview video for table work in joins in the Kosovo geoprocessing assignment. And a large part of the upcoming assignment is geoprocessing particular features within the map. And then once you have those things processed, you're going to be assigning certain values or certain qualitative ranking to your results, and then you're going to be thematically mapping. So this video is just going to cover kind of working in the table once you actually have all your geoprocessing done. And remember, geoprocessing is happening up here at the top, and we're doing things like buffering, clips, and intersects and unions. These are all the geoprocessing tools that we talked about during the lecture and also for the in-class lab. So once you've enacted those things that are asked for in the assignment, you're going to get to a point where you're going to want to thematically map your districts. And I want to touch on that right now. So the first thing I need to do in any mapping session, of course, is connect to the data. So I'm going to go to Folder Connections and just make sure I'm connected to Chapter 6 there. And we can see I have a shapefile exports from before, and I have my shapefile that I sent out. And also within my Kosovo ERW, I have an exports folder here with something in it. So you're going to be finally mapping thematically to the districts layer. So you're going to process all your ERW, and then you're going to associate that ERW to the districts. And what's really important here is that if we drop in the districts, so now that I'm connected here, I can just go to Layers and say Add Data, and I'll go up to the top, go to Folder Connections, go into the geodatabase, and here I can see Administrative Boundaries. We're not mapping to municipalities, so let's bring in municipalities. That's this layer here that's a little bit larger. I would suggest you using municipalities in your final map. What you could do is you can go to fill color, no fill color, and then your outline color, maybe you would make it, say, let's just say a dark blue 1. And then if you want to just map or label the municipalities, you can do that. I'm doing it right now, so I'll go to Label and click on Label Features, call it the name, and let's make this a little bit bigger. Make it 12, say apply, okay. So now I can see these larger administrative boundaries. But really what we're interested in mapping to is the districts layer. So I'm going to bring in the districts layer. And we can see that the districts layer is much smaller than the municipalities. So just make sure when you're doing your final thematic mapping that you are mapping to the districts feature set. Okay, so if we open the attribute table, what's important here is that we have a name, and we have you'll have some data along with the name. And I believe the name is the join field that you'll be using between your contaminated districts data that you process and this particular shapefile. One thing that you're going to need to do towards the end, after you've done all your geoprocessing with your ERW material, is you're going to have to take that data and join it to districts. So you're going to be joining from district to district. And what's important to realize is that you're going to have 91 features that are going to have a null value. They're not going to have any contamination. And those are going to be mapped as none. So null becomes none. And of course you can do that easily in your thematic mapping. And if you click on district and go to properties and you're doing your final symbology, under categories, here's where you can change it. You'll add all your values, and then you'll see null here. You'll change null to none, or you can also do it here. Okay, so what's important to realize is that we're going to be joining, and we're going to be joining from districts on the districts column. And I want to show you two ways to do joins. One way is I'm just going to make another instance of districts. So I'm going to go Data, Export the Data, and I'll send it out to, I'll go to Folder Connections, Shapefile Exports, and I'll call this District Dummy. I'm just making kind of a fake districts here. I'll say Save, OK. And I can bring it into my ArcMap session. Now I can join these two things. So if I go to District and say Data Joins and Relates, I can join it, and it's going to see District Dummy. I could also do municipalities, but I'm not going to do that. And I'm going to say name and name, and I'm going to keep all records, and I'm going to validate the join. So it goes through and it says I'm not going to index it in this case. I'll say no. So now I have 327 to 327 records matching. So I'll say close and say OK. And say no. And so if I go to districts now and open up the attribute table, now I can see the joins taking place. So if I scroll down over here, I can see the same data after. We can see my object ID. From here on in, this is my join data. It's basically the same data, of course, but it's joined. Okay, so in this instance, we're taking a polygon shapefile and we're joining to a polygon shapefile. Now, a lot of times what you're going to be doing is joining from a attribute table to a shapefile, in this case to districts. So let's do that. So if we, under districts, if we go ahead and say Open Attribute Table, what we can do now is we can actually export out this particular table. So we go Table, Export the Table, and let's go put it somewhere. We can put it here as a DBase table under Shapefile Exports. Let's just try that. We'll call it Table _ Export and say Save. And let's add it to the map. Now we can also do another one. So we would say Export, and this time let's send it to Kosovo ERW geodatabase, our geodatabase. And here we can call it a DBase. Well, let's go back in. Well, I'll tell you what. So under Folder Connections, I'm going to go to File and Personal Geotables. Now it will see Kosovo. So it's really important, if I want to save it just as a DBase table alone, I need to be out of the geodatabase. If I want to save it as a geodatabase table, which will give it a little bit more functionality, then I go ahead and click on .gdb, and here I could send it out here, and I'm just going to call it Table Export and say Save. OK. And I'm going to add it to the map. So now if I go to Arc Catalog, let's take a look and see how it saved these two. So here it's saving it as Table Export within the geodatabase, and here it's saving it here. You can see that the icons are slightly different. It's essentially the same type of data, though. It's a tabular format. And we can also do a join on that tabular format. So let's go to Districts and say Join. I'm going to remove the prior join first. So I'm going to go to Districts and say Join and Relates. Now I'm going to see Table Export. I can see both of them, so either one I could join on. Let's do the first one. And here I would do name, name. I'm going to keep all the records, validate the join. I'm not going to index it. So now we can see 327 to 327 again. Say close, OK. And then we go to districts and say Open Attribute Table. And here I have a nice join. We can see that the join's taken place. Okay, so that's joining to either another shapefile, its attribute table, so you're joining from attribute table to attribute table, or if you want to, you can export out your process data to either a .dbf or as a table within a geodatabase. Okay, both those are options that you can do. So hopefully that will help you when you get to that final stage where you need to do a join between districts and all the processed data that you've processed that has a column called districts on it. This will help out in that final step.